I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Pleased to be here and pleased to have you along as well. Today's program is the first in a series. We're organizing to talk about civic, cultural, political realities and opportunities in our community. Today my guest is Corey Day. Corey Day for 8 years has served as the executive director of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the DFL. From fundraising to electing progressive leaders, the Minnesota DFL is noted as one of the strongest, most well-funded, and best-managed Democratic parties in the nation. From holding back the red waves to making electoral history at both the state and national levels, Corey Day was at the center of building a state Democratic Party that has become the Midwest's North Star. With a background in managing campaigns, in building coalitions, and in grassroots organizing, Corey Day played a key role in the success of Minnesota's DFL. He's bringing this incredible wealth of experience now to the market with his new company, Blue Ox Strategies. Corey's worked coast to coast building strong relationships with influencers in progressive politics, with noted corporate leaders and decision makers at local, state, and national levels of government. From working with the mayor of Los Angeles to serving on multiple presidential campaigns, Corey Day has earned a reputation for his visionary leadership and ability to make resourceful decisions to reach ambitious goals. Corey's experiences include overseeing million-dollar budgets, designing successful campaigns focused on grassroots, building lasting valued relationships with activists, labor leaders, and elected officials, and inspiring the next generation of diverse leaders. Through Blue Ox Strategies, Corey Day will leverage his experience and work with clients as a partner in progress to make great things happen. Corey, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Al. Good to see you again.
Well, you know, you've been doing a lot of great things here in Minnesota. I have been impressed with you. I've told you this because you've been in the game at a young age. You're a young man, and I think in many ways it's important that the DFL and political realities focus on young energy. You bring that. You represent it. Tell me where you are in terms of how you've decided to jump into the political process early on and stay.
Yeah, when I was younger, coming up through school and college, I had played sports, and when you're playing sports at that level, it takes a lot of time and energy. And the one thing outside of that that I just had a passion for, and the biggest thing that I would say to folks when I was in college, or even as I got into this business, the reason for it was it's relevant. What you do day to day actually affects people's lives. The people that you work to get elected, the policies you fight for, they actually affect lives. And I wanted to do something that had a relevance to it and something that I knew that would actually help other folks out. So yeah, that's what drove me into working into this field. Now, once you get in, you never know what road you're going to be on or what lane you're going to be in. But it's definitely something that most folks I know and the folks I've worked for, you have to have a passion for helping other people.
Let's go straight to the birth of Blue Ox Strategies. What's your vision there? We'll come back to your history and your background and things that brought you here. But right now, you're in a transitional spot and you're launching a new venture. What is Blue Ox Strategies?
So what Blue Ox Strategies is it's going to be a public affairs company that focuses on campaigns and advocacy. Now, the big thing I thought about when I was working for the DFL and as I traveled around the country, dealing with different vendors, different other firms, is that you just did not see people who were doing this work who looked or sound like me, or folks from the communities that I'm from, or the communities I've served. And I really think it's important that when we're having these conversations and we're fighting these different battles, that you have someone at the table who actually looks and sounds and represents a different voice. And I really wanted Blue Ox Strategies in this space, especially in Minnesota, where you go to the Capitol and you go to the halls of the legislature, you do not see actually you don't see any black lobbyists, to be completely honest with you. You don't see folks who are working outside the Capitol who are doing the public affairs side of this. You don't see a lot of folks or people of color. And so I really just wanted to make sure that Blue Ox Strategies was going to occupy that space. And what we're going to do is make sure that we work to bring folks who look like us and sound like us into the fold.
Why the name Blue Ox Strategies? Interesting name. Tell me what's the story on that name?
So the one thing that, you had alluded to kind of the DFL party. One thing that Minnesota has a reputation for is that when it comes to working together in coalitions, participation, being involved, folks know that Minnesota is the North Star, as you said. It's the gold standard. And I really wanted something that reflected Midwestern values. And I felt the Blue Ox is something that's very Midwestern. I think folks from coast to coast, when you say Blue Ox, they think about, they think about Minnesota. And the blue, obviously, is that, I've done most of my work on the Democratic side of the aisle. And I wanted folks to know it's a Democratic firm and that we are Midwestern. We have Midwestern values, and we're going to bring that to the fold.
Why do you think there has been a dearth of presence of black people, people of color, in the lobbying and public affairs space? What's the reason for it?
That's a great question, and I wish I had the answer. I think some of the reason is that we haven't, and this is me just talking as Democrats and just folks who are public affairs or political operatives, we haven't done a great job in building a pipeline or a bench of young people of color, millennials, and really, we need to do a better job of supporting them, mentoring them, making sure that they understand that, hey, this is something you can do. This is a road that you can come on. And I think for a lot of folks, I think they go into other sectors too. You can go to the nonprofit sector, and there's other places where you can do a lot of good. And I think some folks have looked at this lane as being kind of, a little kind of cynical about it. And I think we as leaders, our elected officials, our party needs to do a better job of making sure we're supporting folks of color, that when we do go to those halls, that you actually see them lobbying, working for some of these corporate 500 companies, being public affairs folks, or government relations people, folks working inside of the government, working for the governor or the legislature. We need to see more people of color there also. I mean, if you see the PAGE program or you see folks who are working in the House and Senate, you just don't see a lot of folks who are of color, except, and I credit our folks, people of color in our caucus, the new caucus that just got activated, about people of color caucus, that they're doing a great job in trying to energize and brings folks in, but we need to do a better job overall as a party and as political professionals.
So how did you get the job as the executive director of Minnesota's DFL party?
Yeah, so I came to Minnesota around 2000 to work on a senatorial campaign. And one of the first people I met professionally and worked with was Ken Martin. And so Ken and I worked on
Ken is the chair.
Yes, Ken Martin is the chair of the DFL party. We worked on numerous projects and campaigns through the years. And Ken got elected chair. Once he got elected chair in 2009, 2010, he asked me to come serve. And obviously, I believe in his leadership, but I also believe that the Democratic Party needed it. I think it was a party that was somewhat in shambles, and I was more than ready to take on the challenge to help elect Democrats and bring the party back to where it used to be.
What kind of success did you have?
You know what? I'm damn proud of what we did over the years at the DFL. We were able to make sure that every statewide office is Democratic. We have the House of Representatives in a majority. We were able to flip numerous congressional seats. More than proud of elections for Keith Ellison and Ilhan Omar. We, year in, year out, and cycle after cycle, was the gold standard with state parties around the country. Not just because we were successful in an electoral, electing really good progressive Democrats, but it was the way we did it. We were a party that folks were partnering with, our progressive partners partnered with, our elected officials partnered with. They ran program through our party. They allowed us to go out there and actually do the job that parties are supposed to do, which is talk to voters, energize our base. And it was a great 8 years, and when I look back on it, I look back with only pride.
I'm presuming that you had experiences that are kind of reflective of things going right, and you must have experiences of everything going wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Give me some stories. I'm interested in something that comes to mind when you say, you know what, this is the way it's supposed to be, and this sort of reveals when things are proper in alignment,
yes,
what can happen, what benefit can flow from that. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, you can't help but think more recently with things, but I think about sitting in the war room this last cycle, and as we were watching the numbers come in, and we saw that that Keith Ellison was going to win that race, and knowing just the challenges that we went through.
That was a nail biter.
Yeah, but we were able to, but the great things with analytics is we knew kind of which counties were going to come in. We had a pretty good idea of the percentages that we were going to win by in certain places. So we were able to more or less call it a little earlier than the press were able to call that race. And it was just an amazing feeling, knowing just, A, how extraordinary Keith is, and then B, knowing all the folks around his campaign, or all the folks with different organizations, our labor partners who just put so much energy into that race. I mean, that was one of those races that was definitely an all hands on deck team effort, and it's something I'm just absolutely proud of. Then I think about the opposite, and I'll never forget sitting in, I think it was the Marriott. We're at the Marriott, I believe, for our election night party, and we're looking at the numbers come in, and people. Every poll we had, every indicator we had, Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president of the United States. And I can't even describe sitting in that room, and when that picture of, even saying President Trump gives me bad feelings. Seeing that picture come up, declaring him the winner, it was seriously the worst feeling I think I've felt in my 20-something years in doing this, and just the idea that we all thought we had it right, and just how wrong.
You had it right for Minnesota.
Well,
didn't you?
Well, it was. I mean, all honesty, our polling, had us winning by 9 points or 2 points in Minnesota. We won by barely a point.
Okay.
So everything was off. And that was just one of those things. I mean, it was just such a lesson learned. And on that day, the body of politics literally changed. The entire world, and when it comes to electoral politics and the fights that we're fighting, changed. It was and to this day, you're seeing that nothing is the same. And yeah.
But the midterms.
Yeah, the midterms were great. I mean, it was a great rebuke of Trump's policies and kind of where he's bringing this country. The midterm, I mean, it was just awesome seeing those results. We got to keep it up, right? I mean, Democrats can't get cocky at this point. I mean, we got to realize this isn't about Russia. This isn't about going after Donald Trump. This isn't about impeachment. This is about health care. This is about staying on message and making sure that we're presenting the American people alternative, not just vote against this guy because he's running this country into the ground, but vote for us because we're about A, B, and C. And so we have to just keep our eye on the ball, and I'm really hoping that all my friends who are at the parties around the country working with these candidates, and whatever work Blue Ox does with candidates, we're going to make sure that we're presenting another picture of an alternative, an idea of how we can make things better, not just voting against something.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guest is Corey Day, former executive director of the Minnesota DFL, now the leader of a consulting firm, a lobbyist firm called Blue Ox Strategies. Corey, you mentioned that the important thing going forward, moving towards 2020, is that the Democratic Party, in particular, Democrats across the country, stay on message. You mentioned health care. What are the other 5 principal messages that you think are going to drive this sense of equity, ownership, clarity from within the people versus the temptation to rail against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think healthcare is going to be no more an issue. I think economic issues are going to always drive. It doesn't matter what district you are in this country. People worry about can they put food on their table and they're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. So I believe that's going to absolutely drive nationally. I mean, I don't care if you're in West Virginia or you're in Southern California. Those are going to be extremely important issues. But I think the one thing we're seeing right now, and it's a new phenomenon, is the way the millennials, people of color, some of these social justice issues, these criminal reform issues, they're really in the Democratic Party and the Democratic primary right now. Those issues are going to rise up. I think we're going to see these 20-some presidential candidates have to talk about some issues that they haven't talked about in the past. That some of these issues, because if you look at our base of young people, millennials, people of color, black women, they're going to have to address the issues that are affecting those different communities. And whoever does it the best, whoever does it most authentic, is going to be the one that emerges out of that presidential primary. And you'll see this around the country, that the folks who are able to really address, not just, I mean, you have to address those key, you know, a chicken in a pot issues. But you're going to also have to talk about these issues that are truly affecting people's day-to-day lives.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Concluding this segment of our interview with Corey Day. We'll come back in a few minutes with a follow-up interview with Corey Day. Conversations with Al McFarlane, thank you for being part of this webcast, this broadcast.